Haunting of Villa Diodati proves to be one of the closest to good episodes of this series and one of the best of the era. Hell, if you take Jack Owl Fugitive, this episode is better. This episode does a lot of interesting things and has a lot of interesting elements, but, like a lot of stories with great potential, and it's not exactly exempt from stupid shit either, and one of the most interesting parts of this story is let down by the preceding two episodes. In the long run, making this episode suck considerably. So let's take a look at Haunting of Villa Diodati. This episode begins brilliantly, showing us the setting and location of this story. While I still find these texts look stupid as fuck and impressively unprofessional, this is a great start. The lighting, something I usually have a problem with in this series, is excellent here, showing us the candlelit corridors and rooms, really accentuating the creepy atmosphere. Also, the butler is pretty funny here, reminding me of my favourite moody twat.
Bristol! Doctor, we're in Bristol!
120 miles from where we should be. Impressive.
No, not impressive. Annoying.
No, this is impressive. This is annoying.
Unfortunately, this great intro, like in many other episodes, is ruined the second the FAB show up. The creepy atmosphere set up just gets shat on by this unfunny moment, and for once, I'd actually have preferred if they kept the title sequence at the beginning of the episode. Usually I only like it when RTD did it at the beginning of a new series, as it welcomed in new viewers better and told the audience they were in for a different experience. Like the opening to Spyfall Part 1 would be better if they just started on a title sequence, instead of the shit opening we got instead. Moffat also used the title sequence more effectively in the opener episodes because we'd either have a tease of the opening before the title sequence, or we'd just have the characters vibing and then we're told what they're going to do. While this criticism is pretty irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, preferences will be preferences. I also find it really strange that Lord Brian just lets them in and lets them explore, like, what? I know if some freaks came to my door, showed me a blank piece of paper and then asked to come in, I'd tell them to fuck right off. Bizarre way to throw the FAM into a situation. Also, I think it would have been a lot funnier if the first time they see each other is when these acclaimed writers are just rolling around on the floor like fucking apes. That would be a lot funnier. Then again, the comedy is almost non-existent with this show now. The scene where they are dancing is really weird as well, but not in a bad way. I thought it was pretty funny seeing the writers casually chat shit about each other even though they can definitely hear each other. And the butler being a mood was a nice cap-off to the end of the scene as well. After we get a quick short scene showing us the vase breaking, this was a nice setup for later in the episode. The doctor then tells us the issue with the scenario. They are a man down. However, I wish this was presented in a more interesting way as none of the other poets seemed to care. If Mary seemed more concerned about the fact her soon-to-be husband was missing, this would be more interesting, and so would she. Like, in the opening scene when Brian is reading the book, what if she's like, guys, shouldn't we wait for Shelley? This would be a better setup for the mystery of where Percy is, and it would make Mary more interesting. After that, we get some fantastic editing as we follow Graham when he's looking for the shitter. The shot of the people appearing after the flashes of lightning were also creepy as fuck, and the shot of him looping the stairs was also very well done. However, one nitpick I have with this scene is wishing that Graham had a funnier line about going in circles. Or if he just didn't say anything at all, because that would be funnier. After another good lightning shot in a scene with Yaz, the Doctor does what she does best. Uses the Sonic. And we are actually shown the Doctor's gender change be used in an interesting way for the first time in forever. Lord Brian being attracted to the Doctor in this episode is brilliant, and this scene starts off two concepts well. The FAM not being as welcomed as initially thought, and someone being attracted to 13 in a physical way. Which, when you think about it, you'd think this had happened before. You know, before the 19th episode in. However, that little streak of greatness is then immediately ruined by a shitty scene with Ryan and Mary. While Mary's line about colonies was funny because it shows how fucking dense Ryan is, Caligari not saying a word is fucking weird, especially when you consider he challenges him to a duel later. Not gonna lie though, Graham saves the scene with a funny moment where he forbids the duel.
Will Mr. O'Brien be yours?
No.
Cheers, mate.
No, I mean, what? No. Because there's going to be no duel, I absolutely forbid it.
And we see the hand crawl out and choke Ryan. And when the Doctor shows up, the scene gets better with the destruction of the hand. And another butler reaction.
Great shot!
I like this butler a lot more than I should. After the Doctor licks the hand, which, while disgusting, is a good scene because it reminds me of the god Tenet licking his way around the universe, and it's also a lot more like the Doctor to be more resourceful instead of just using the stupid Sonic. And then we get more of Brian drooling over 13. And these scenes are made funnier by the death stares his girlfriend give, which just reminded me of 12 looking at anyone.
No, she is from somewhere much, much stranger.
North.
Oi! We're not all strange. Shut up. Shut the fuck up.
Hi.
Hey!
Welcome to my diss track 2019.
Morgs! Yo guys, it's Morgs! Welcome back!
Oh.
That wasn't even fair. I was wondering, like, what the fuck are you doing, Sam?
Okay, maybe we are. We get more scenes of the house fucking with everyone, which upped the stakes a lot and created a lot more tension. Alongside that, after we find out it's a perception filter, we get more traversing through the house, in really interesting and well done scenes. Also, we get a pretty funny scene. As obvious as it is that Jodie didn't walk into anything, this is still funny. However, miraculously, everyone ends up in the same room. No explanation is given to us and we are not shown how they get there. Come on, you were doing so well! This series has a pattern of just ignoring details that should be relevant and it's annoying as fuck. However, they make up for this annoyance the second Cyberteeth shows up because no word of a lie, I was not expecting this. As awful as the promotional material for this series was, as it basically just told us the lone Cyberman would show up in the finale, this was a brilliant reveal, because it was so unexpected. It wasn't in the trailers or anything. But this is when some of the finale cock-teasing gets more irritating than usual. The first thing the companions say when this thing shows up is that they have to remind us that Jack said it.
Jack's warning! Beware of the lone Cyberman, don't let it have what it wants!
At all costs.
Yeah, we get it, finale bait and fan wank. However, the reference to Bill being converted was brilliant. Even though Bill being turned into a Cyberman was pointless because the Dr. Falls is a piece of shit and Bill gets to fucking live anyway and fucking hit the Dr. Falls! Don't worry, I'll review that episode one day because I'm aware that for some reason, most people love it. But on the topic of the lone Cyberman himself, yeah, he's mostly okay in this episode and not the other two. But I've got to say, the design is fucking fantastic. Ignoring the Cyberteeth, the sound design and battered look of this Cyberman really is unlike anything we've seen before. However, the music, as usual, is a complete letdown and we don't have any of that brilliant iconic music from the first 10 series accompanying the Cybermen. The human part of Cyberteeth was definitely the most interesting part, as he can use emotion when required, which sets up the potential for some great manipulation which we do see eventually in this episode. And we see loads of it in the next 2 episodes. I do think, even in this episode, it could have been made a lot more interesting if he was completely powerless, until he got the Cyberium. But then, we just get a stupid scene where he's struck by lightning. That's so dumb. And unfortunately, in the same scene, it was actually shown some promise. While the Cyber Rages are unintentionally comedic, Jodie is actually really great in this scene. She has some fantastic witty dialogue which are very well performed and delivered. And yes, I'm actually talking about Jodie's performance in a positive light. How rare is that? Unfortunately, we temporarily return to the 13 norm of just explaining things really quickly. Like, come on, we don't need an explanation on what the lightning is doing because it's completely obvious as to what it's doing. It's lightning! When we find Percy in the basement, we get another laughable fit of rage from Cyberteeth. This villain's threat levels are slowly plummeting. After we see how Percy gets the Cyberium, we get Jodie's best performance as the Doctor. In this speech where she talks about the burden of other life and the team structure is absolutely fucking fantastic. However, you know what I'm gonna say, the music in this scene is fucking awful and makes the speech all the less impactful. But the lone Cyberman, when he comes down, absolutely steals the show in this powerhouse scene. Despite him having a really stupid name, Shelley trying to turn him makes up for it. And when it backfires, my god, this scene is amazing. This horrific moment where the Cyberman uses her own personal issues against her and then rationalizes murder of his own fucking children. Wow! Thank god this era has finally had a dark episode, because they've been severely lacking for the last 3 years. The last dark episode we got, ironically, was with the Cybermen, and it was World Enough and Time. And what do these stories both have in common? They are both fucking terrifying. However, the resolution for this story just turned out to be a turn for the worst, as not only is it really easy, but when 13 absorbs the Cyberium, she doesn't even do anything with it. She could have used it against Cyberteeth to go and banish him or temporarily push him back or something. And it could have had a lasting effect on her or something, like you know how the 12th Doctor went blind. But no, she just gives it to the Cyberman in the most forced way possible.
What are you doing? Giving it what it wants.
But could you have been any less subtle?
Tell the Doctor, the lone Cyberman, don't give it what it wants.
And then, that's it. Also, I forgot to mention that from the basement scene until the end of the episode, the companions are annoying as fuck. The ending doesn't fare much better either. They just force the Doctor into a poem. So this moment just felt a bit forced, and that was it. So that was The Haunting of Silver Turk, and I've gotta say, this episode, while one of the best of the era, still isn't the best thing ever. While the first half is really good and interesting, the second Cyberteeth shows up, it's just shit with sprinkles. There's loads wrong with it, but hey, sprinkles make them better. While Jodie's performance was actually notable in this episode, the companions are their usual terrible selves. The music is fucking appalling, and all the interesting things set up by this episode go absolutely nowhere, making this episode on rewatch feel pretty pointless. Definitely not as good as I remember it being. But there are some good scenes and moments, and the usual overstuffing of characters actually works well here. Because all these characters are likeable and interesting besides Mary Shelley herself. But the ending to this episode is really shit and overly forced, and it really feels anticlimactic. It's nowhere near as bad as the resolution in Can You Hear Me though. And at least there's some interesting ideas floating around here. And now I might as well mention the elephant in the room. That being, this story is extremely similar to Silver Turk. Not an exact beat-by-beat remake, but the concepts are literally the same. Mary Shelley, Cybermen. Come on! That's 2 episodes in a row where you just steal elements from existing episodes in the universe. Also, doesn't that basically just confirm that Big Finish isn't canon? Could we get an F in the chat for all the Big Finish fans out there? Up next, Ascension of the Cybermen. Yeah, no interest in meme, that episode is fucking shit!